Hey everybody, it's your girl, Dr. Monica, and it is Friday night. I am here with Miss Duquesa Dean. She is from the Bahamas, you all. Right now, she is in the Bahamas and joining me here tonight for us to go over, what is she talking about? Take your power back and changing the game. So we are here. We're going to have an amazing time tonight. So Duquesa Dean is a certified public speaker. She's a published author. She's an international speaker. She is a self-development mentor. I mean, she is a woman of many talents. She has worked with leading businesses in the Bahamas, and she is absolutely amazing. She's the author of 4 different books. We're going to talk about those books later on tonight. After a near-death experience and devastating hardships, she realized the powerful process of inner evolution. What do I talk to you all about? The inner being a lot, right? And the beauty of living authentically, yes. Right? It is very important for us to live authentically. No time to wear masks. So if you're wearing a mask tonight, you're going to learn about taking your power back and taking that mask off and leaving it off. She is a dedicated woman. She is dedicated to helping women boldly claim their purpose and living a purposeful, fulfilled life. Hi, Duquesa. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Hi, Monica. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to partner with you tonight as we talk about life.
Good. All right. I'm excited to have you too. So tell us about what it means taking your power back and changing the game. Was there ever a time that you lost your power?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there have been many times in my life where I've lost my power. We go through so many seasons in our lives and so many cycles that it takes a while for us to really get into who we are. Some of us get there quicker than others, and some of us tarry just a little bit longer before we get to a comfortable place of owning our power. One of the most significant times in my life when I gave my power up was when I was married. I got married with a lot of illusions about what marriage is. I had a lot of fantasies and fairy tale ideas of what marriage was all about. I was young at the time, and so I didn't fully understand the virtues and values that I held close to me and what I would want in a partner as well. And I totally ignored some red flags, and I found myself in a domestically abusive marriage where it was one of the worst times of my life. I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I had no say. I felt unseen, unvalued, undervalued, underheard. There's so much secrecy involved in a relationship like that because you don't want your family to know. You're isolated from people. So it was a difficult time in my life, and I thought that I had no hope. I thought that there was no way out. I thought that I had no power but to actually sit in that situation. And that was perhaps one of 2 major devastating times in my life when I gave my power up.
Mm-hmm. So I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. So I understand what it means to lose your power in a relationship with somebody who's supposed to love and nurture you. So you mentioned red flags. What are some of the red flags that some of our listeners need to be aware of when they're engaging in a relationship with someone? What are some of those red flags?
Well, some of the red flags that we should pay attention to is to see the alignment of values. Sometimes our belief systems are different, and yes, opposites attract, but when it comes to core values, we want to know that the people that we are involved with believe some of the same things, like they have integrity, they're honest, they believe in having a one person at a time, monogamous relationship. They are cool-headed in arguments. Their temper doesn't flare. They're not verbally abusive, so they're very careful in how they handle you and the words that they say. So when you see someone just spewing at you and cannot control their anger, when you have a small disagreement, imagine what a larger disagreement will do. Red flags include family members who see things that we don't see. Sometimes when we're in love, we're blinded by love, and so we don't really see. And so sometimes our family members will say, well, be careful, or I noticed these trends, we should really pay attention to that. Red flags could also be when they don't return our calls consistently, when they don't show up, when they promise, when they don't keep their word. Red flags could also be them skipping dates, making excuses. I mean, there's so many things, and red flags are different for different people because we all want different things and have different values. So what would be a red flag for me may not be a red flag for you, because you may not want the same things that I want, which is why it's so important that we know who we are, we become grounded in who we are, and we know what our non-negotiables are. A red flag could be someone that just keep pushing our boundaries. They don't respect our boundaries, and so they push past our boundaries to get exactly what it is that they want, and they make us the enemy 100% of the time. They take no responsibility for their own actions, but they blame everything on the other person. They are some really key red flags to look out for.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned red flags may not be the same for everybody. And that is so true, because what one woman is looking for, or man is looking for in a relationship, somebody else may not be looking for that same thing. Yes. So in that light, what we may see is unacceptable, another person is perfectly fine with it. Yes. So you're absolutely right. Now, since we're on this topic, before we shift to another one, you know, sometimes women stay in those relationships out of fear of not being able to find somebody else.
Yes.
They may stay in that relationship because, you know, they may think, oh, I may not have another, excuse me, I may not have another chance. So I need to go on and stick with and stay in this relationship just in case. Do you have any advice for women in regards to that?
I absolutely do. Because I've been there. I've been at a place where I've stayed in a toxic relationship much longer than I should have, because I thought that had I left, I had 2 children, and who would want a woman with 2 children? I didn't have my Coca-Cola shape anymore, so who would want a plumper woman? I started to give myself excuses and reasons to stay. And I want to say to the person out there that's in that situation, it's important that our self-love, or our love for ourselves, is not contingent on someone else loving us. Our worth is not contingent on being in a relationship. Society makes us feel as if there's something wrong with us if by a certain age we're not attached in partnership, if we don't, when you get married, when you having kids. Society and family always has another demand. We have to know who we are. We have to love who we are, so that when somebody pulls their love away from us, it doesn't shake the foundation of who we are. We can be with that person, or we can be without that person, and we understand what it is to be alone. Because we're alone doesn't mean that we're lonely. We find companionship outside of romance. Companionship could be going out with a girlfriend. Companionship could be a family member. And so if you are in a relationship where you're holding on because you don't think that someone else is going to love you more, I want to disrupt you tonight and ask you, how are you really loving yourself? Because if you love yourself, will you really allow someone to mistreat you and mistreat you and mistreat you and make you feel next to nothing and stay with that person just to have something? What exactly do you have? So I want to encourage you, if you're in that situation, to really focus on building your confidence, focus on loving yourself, focus on being alone for a while. I'm going to tell you about that journey in a couple of minutes, but focus on spending some time outside of a relationship to really get to know who you are, to get to know what you love, to date yourself. Take some time for you. Why are you laughing?
I am, you know why? Because that's a part of the story that I tell. Date yourself. I have not, when I go take myself on dates, I typically would do a video, and I'll start it with date night. And people that watch, they know, okay, Monica's taking herself on a date. So when you said learn to take yourself on a date, that's why I was like, yes. And when you asked the question, I want to challenge you. If you're allowing someone to treat you this way, how are you loving yourself? That's why I pointed to the sign behind me, because my thing is, I want women and men to start loving themselves to life.
Yeah.
And when you are in an abusive relationship, you are not loving yourself to life. You're allowing someone to actually love you to death.
Yeah.
And they can love you to death in such a way that you lose your self-esteem. You stop valuing your self-worth. You stop dressing or, getting dressed and made up the way you used to, because they want you to go out of the house looking a specific way. You're not able to talk to your friends. So how are you loving yourself to life? So that's why when you say things and I'm like, this is because I'm saying, yes, I get it. I understand it. It's the same message that I give out to others as well. So I appreciate that. So when you see me giving a big smile, that because I'm like, yes, that is the message that we need to continue to get out to others. So thank you. And then you also mentioned learning to get to know yourself.
Yes.
When you're in an abusive relationship, it's difficult for you to learn to get to know yourself, because you pretty much lost yourself.
Yes.
In that relationship.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's why it just excites me when you say stuff like that.
Awesomeness. So we're sharing the same message. This is confirmation for someone who's heard it from you, and it's reaffirming the message that you share all of the time.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. So in that time that you lost your power, can you describe to us what those broken moments felt like for you, and maybe give us an example of what was happening in those broken moments?
Sure. So when I was 8 years old, I want to start there to just frame this conversation, because when I was 8 years old, I used to sneak outside of my grandmother's house, sit on the back stairs and stargaze. I would look up in the stars and I would wish upon anything that was moving. It could have been a satellite, it could be a flying star, it could be a plane, whatever was shooting across the sky, I was wishing on it. I was wishing that the life that I wanted to live when I was an adult came true. My wishes were that I would show up big in the world, that I would teach people, that I would empower people. I didn't know how, but at 8 years old, I knew that I wanted to make an impact on the world. But along my life's journey, there were some difficult moments. My primary nurturer died when I was 13, and I struggled from 13 to 18 with building self-esteem, self-value, and self-worth, because the person that was pouring into me died and nobody really replaced her. And so with no replacement during the transition years, it was difficult for me. And I ended up acting out and becoming rebellious. And I was labeled a troubled teen by my community, by my family, because I had so many pent-up emotions that I didn't know how to deal with. I struggled with so much during my teen years. There was trauma involved by people who were supposed to nurture me, but instead they violated and took advantage of me. And so I struggled quite a bit. And to get out of that struggle, to get out of that environment, I got married. Clue number one, I got married for the wrong reason. Right. I'm going to openly admit that. I got married because I wanted to have more control over my life. I wanted somebody to love me. I wanted to build a partnership. I wanted to prove to everybody around me that the way that they read me was wrong. Like, I'm going to show you how to do it. But that was the wrong reason for getting married. And 5 years into my marriage, I found myself on this Saturday morning going to the grocery store, coming back home, and going into my duties of cleaning the house, because there was a woman's rule to clean the house, so I had to clean the house. And I cleaned that house from top to bottom, and the last room I cleaned was the bathroom. And I don't know if it's ever happened to you, Monica, where you just stand up for a moment and either say, this is not the life that I imagined for me. Or ask yourself, is this really my life? And in the bathroom that Saturday, I found myself saying, this is not the life of my dreams. This is not what I imagined for myself when I was 8 years old, sitting outside the backyard, staring at those stars. And so I walked out of the bathroom, went to the kitchen, opened the white refrigerator, pulled out that orange juice, walked back to the bathroom, down that long hall, entered the bathroom, opened the medicine cabinet, and pulled out that bottle of tablets. And I sat in front of a toilet. The glistening toilet in my bathroom, I sat in front of that. And every time I share my story, I speak about how ironic it is that I sat in front of the toilet because I equated my life to a toilet. It was a place where people came and deposited waste, solid waste, liquid waste. It didn't matter, but I was just a place that people dumped on because I had no power. I'd given up my power. And so I decided that I would take my life. And as I sat on my bathroom floor with this bottle of juice and this container of tablets, I had two anchoring thoughts. The first one was I had two kids, 3 and 5. And I said, if I take my life, they would forever be known as the children whose mother committed suicide, who abandoned them, who left them, and not wanting them to have that label and not wanting them to have to struggle through life wondering why mommy didn't love me enough to stay. I didn't take my life. And then the second thing that happened as I sat down on my bathroom floor was I just happened to glance up. And I glanced up and we had recess lights in our bus. So I looked up and down, flowing down from those recess lights or these rays. And the rays reminded me of those Christian movies that I watched when I was growing up, because I went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, visitation on Saturday. But in order for me to live life on my terms for so long, from about 18 to about 25, I had to shut God off. So I didn't have a conscience about what God wanted or what religion dictated. So I shut God off. But in that bathroom, as I sat on the floor and those rays were beaming down, I remembered that regardless of what was going on in my life, God made a promise to me. And that promise was that everything would work out for my good. And secondly, that he had a plan to prosper me and to give me a good future. And so I got up off the floor, made the courageous decision that I would turn my life around. Monica, I didn't know how I would do it. I had no idea. I was in this rat race where I was doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, but ending up in the same place. And so I had no idea how I would move my life and my children's life out of such a toxic environment. Because one, I didn't want my son to grow up thinking that it was acceptable to treat women that way. And secondly, because I didn't want my daughter to believe that that was acceptable from men. It was a behavior that she should tolerate from men. And so I had no idea how. But it is often said that when the student is ready, the mentor appears. And so 2 days later, this guy approached me. I was at my work and he was a business executive. And you know, it's amazing that people watch us in our environment and we don't even know. And he showed up and he said, listen, I've been watching you. You come to work, you do what's necessary, you're results driven. I was just going to work as an escape from what I was going through. And so I put my everything into my job, but they saw that as a signal of someone that could go up the career ladder. And that time I'm just trying to stay alive. So when he offered this mentorship, I said, this guy joking, man. I'm a little small, tiny girl, perky body, you know, Coca-Cola shaped, pretty brown skin girl. All this dude want to do is try to get some of my precious stuff, you know? I almost said, no, Monica. And then this voice said to me, listen, girl, you are at your lowest. What would one more yes be? And that one yes was the greatest yes of my life. Shortly thereafter, I escaped from my marital home. And when I use the word escape, I don't use that lightly. We were locked in the house. I didn't have a key for the house. And so when my ex-husband left, I pushed my oldest daughter, took the window pane, the bottom window pane out, took the screen out. I pushed my daughter out. I pushed my son out after, and I squeezed through the bottom pane of that window to get out of the house before he got back. Went to the police station, I made my report, and then I went to my family's homestead. And that's really how I got out of that, so that I could have the opportunity to really rebuild my life. I just want to say here before we progress that my ex-husband is a reformed man today. He is a different man. He is a leader in his church. He's married with 3 wonderful children. He is a beautiful husband to a wonderful woman. And so anyone's life can transform. My life transformed, but so did his. And perhaps the experiences that we went through together helped him to realize and recognize that there needed to be a change in his life.
Wow, such a powerful testimony. Thank you for sharing. And you know, the statistics say that it takes a person 7 times to actually leave a relationship. So when you left, did it only take you 1 time to leave and never go back?
That was the 3rd time. And I'd always told myself that 3 times would be the charm. I would give him 3 opportunities of me leaving, right? Mm-hmm. He had many opportunities to physically hit me, but I left 3 times. And on the 3rd time, the first time I went back, my mom was like, oh, you know, for better or for worse, you know, old traditional people. Mm-hmm. The 2nd time, his mom is like, oh, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I went back. The 3rd time I left, I said, this time I left for me. And it didn't matter what anybody said. I would not be going back.
That's the key. You said, I left for me.
Yes.
I left for me. And part of you leaving for you was you leaving for your children as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So good for you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. I think the one difference about, you know, you thought about suicide. I actually attempted suicide.
Wow.
And when I was sharing that with my sons, because my sons were pretty much grown when I did attempt. And the youngest one looked at me after I shared it with him that I tried to commit suicide. And he asked me, well, what was supposed to happen to us?
Wow.
So for anybody out there who's contemplating suicide, and you may think, well, my children are grown, they're living their own life.
Wow.
They'll be fine without me. That is not what your children are going to think.
Yeah.
When my son said what was supposed to happen to us, I will tell you, Duquesa, when anytime that minuscule mustard seed size thought raises up in my mind because of something that may have happened that, you know, I allowed to take my power away, I immediately start demolishing that thought.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have to start throwing down those thoughts, just as we try to build up our faith thoughts. We have to demolish any of those thoughts that come against what the Word of God says.
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing.
That's really powerful that he would ask and what was supposed to happen to us. That is so powerful because like you say, we believe that they're old enough to take care of themselves, but what can replace a mother's love?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, exactly. What can replace a mother's love? Yeah. So once you got out of that relationship, what were the steps that you took to actually start claiming your power back? Because we're talking about taking your power back and changing the game.
Listen, I'm so excited to get into this conversation right now because in order to take your power back and change the script, change the game, we all play games, right? We play board games, we play sports. There's always an end result. To win the game, you have to reach a certain goal. To win the game in soccer, you have to hit the ball into the goalie thing. In football, you have to kick like whatever sport it is. There is a requirement for how to win the game. So in our lives, it's no different. In our lives, there's a requirement for how we win the game of our lives. And that requirement isn't set by anyone other than ourselves. And so in order to reclaim our power, we have to first know what we want. We have to first understand what it is that we want. When people talk about write the vision and make it clear, you know, the thing that's just biblical, it just applies to the church, it just applies to business organizations, but it applies to our lives as well. We cannot shift the power if we don't know what we want. The reality is we are focused on the shoulds of society, the shoulds of the expectations of others. We live our lives to avoid conflict in many instances. We give in to situations and demands that we wouldn't necessarily give into. And a lot of times that's the case because we don't have an end result that we're focused on. If we have that bigger picture, that end result of where we want to go, what we want to be, we're a bit more grounded in the decisions that we make. So as I worked with my mentor, the very first thing my mentor had me do was establish who I was. Monica, I couldn't tell him. When he asked who I was a mother, I was a hotelier. I started all these titles and labels, and he was like, I'm not asking you what you do. I'm asking you who you are. And I sat for a while with that question, and I couldn't answer that because I was a person that would enter a room, feel the energy, and match the energy of that room. I didn't bring my own energy to the room. So I struggled with answering that question. And he was like, it's okay if you don't know. If you don't know, establish who you want to be. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be today? And who do you want to be in the future? And so to change the game, we have to know what our vision is, what our core values are. We have to know the mission that we want to accomplish in this world. A lot of people are lost as it relates to purpose because they're looking for this big, massive thing. But purpose is something that we create. How do I want to show up in the world? What difference do I want to make in the world? How do I want to heal the pain of the world? How do I want to share inspiration with the world? So the very first thing that we have to do is take ownership of our lives by determining where we want to go, who we are, and what our non-negotiable core values will be. That's the first step. The second step is we have to stop playing victims in our lives. We have to get to the place where we understand that wherever we are in life at this particular point in time is the sum of the choices that we've made. Victimhood gives someone else the responsibility for our lives. It makes it seem as if the things that happen in our lives happen to us, but many of those things happen with our tacit approval. Many of those things happen even by our verbal approval. We showed up in situations and experiences, and we allowed certain things to happen, and we have to get to the root of why. And for me, one of the most important root causes I came to was why I selected the same type of men, because I needed to know how to break the pattern. And so I had to see and take responsibility for finding men, attracting men who won't honor me, who won't value me, who won't cherish me. Like they just took me for granted. But I chose to be in relationship with them, and I had to take responsibility. But the root of that stemmed from my childhood, because the root of that, me choosing them, was me proving to myself that I wasn't worthy of a strong, decent, nurturing love. And when we could get to the place of understanding why we show up, we could shift our actions and take responsibility for making things different. That's the second point.
Very good. I like that. So be non-negotiable at your core values, know who you are. And then you mentioned too, know what you want, write the vision and make it plain. Because when we don't know what we want, we will accept anything.
Correct.
And that's the interesting part, is we'll accept anything when we don't know what it is that we want. And then stop playing victim.
Yes.
Because when we play victim, we're giving the other person, they still have power over us.
Absolutely.
Right? So when we leave a domestic violence relationship or anything that took our power away, it does take time for that mental and emotional healing to occur. We may be out physically, but we have to get out mentally.
Yes.
So once we stop playing the victim, that opens up the opportunity for us to begin our healing. But as long as we're playing healing, as long as we're playing victim, it's going to be hard for that healing to get into the heart, the mind, and the soul. Okay.
Correct. And if you look at a basketball game, right, when two teams are playing and one team seems to be taking the lead and they have momentum and they're shooting and they're shooting and they're shooting and they're making their points, the head coach of the next team calls for a timeout. Mm-hmm. And that timeout is to disrupt that pattern, right? Exactly. The timeout is to disrupt it. And so that's what we have to do. We have to disrupt our own patterns, the patterns in our lives.
Very good. I like that. Disrupt those patterns in your life. Bring them to a halt. So how would you encourage our listeners to change the game in their lives?
Well, I want to encourage you to, first of all, build your personal brand, because everything in life stems from your brand. Whether you go to the grocery store, to church, to your work organization, to a social event, it doesn't matter where you go, your brand speaks for you before you even open your mouth. We speak so much with our body language. 55% of the way that we speak is our body. It has nothing to do with our voice. It has nothing to do with our tone, and everything to do with how we carry ourselves. And when we build a strong personal brand, we become more confident in who we are, and that confidence just exudes from us. And so how do you build your personal brand? Well, you have to know who you are. And then you have to determine who you want to be. Like some of the things that I did to build my personal brand was identifying that I needed help with communication. I needed to learn how to speak properly. I needed to learn how to not be nervous in front of a boardroom full of people. So I joined Toastmasters. Toastmasters helped me to hone my speaking, listening, and evaluating skills. And so I learned to become a better person. Another way that I improved my personal brand was by reading a lot of books. I read a lot. Education, just even magazines on camping, just new things so that I didn't get stagnant. I learned how to dress properly for my body shape. I learned the colors that make my body pop, my skin look caramel and pop. Like I took a lot of time to really discover what makes me look good internally first, those virtues internally first, and then how do I enhance that externally? Because if we look beautiful outside, but we're empty on a shell and nasty inside, the brand will not be intact. So I want to encourage you to focus on building your personal brand, and everything around you will change. The law of magnetism says that who we are is who we attract. So if you want to know what your brand is, just think about the people that you have closest to you. Who's in your circle? Because they would have the attributes or some of the attributes that you have, because like-minded people come together. And so in order to become better at attracting better people in our lives, we have to become better. Changing the game and taking your power means that you network with different people. Mm-hmm. It's not time to network with people who are going to pull you down, or network with people who are going to question who do you think you are for wanting to change your life. It's time to now connect with people who are changing their lives, who are focused on becoming better people, who are making contributions that you value, because the alignment is also important, and staying attached to people who are continually growing. When you change your circle, you elevate your entire life, because that's your circle of influence. Mm-hmm. You're changing. Absolutely.
I agree. Elevate your circle. And then, you know, I was waiting on you to hit on another point that I often hear, because you're hitting on a lot of things that I focus on as well. When you were talking about, I learned what colors worked for me. I learned how to dress my body. So what I was going to say was, we have to sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, dress for the title that we want, if it's not the title that we currently have.
Yes.
So if you're working in one area, then, and you want to build up that leadership to a leadership area, then while you're in that not senior level position, then you need to dress as if you were in that. And then not only dress it, but you need to do the hard work. Like you said, they were watching you and you didn't even know you were being watched.
Correct.
And a lot of times that happens. And so we have to do that. And then you talked about colors. You have to know what colors work for you. Olive green does not work for me. It makes me look ill. So I do not wear olive green. So you have to work through all of that. And when you were talking to your mentor, when you were going to Toastmasters and learning how to dress your body and making those changes, you were getting to know yourself.
Absolutely. And I want to share that while I did those things that year, I call it my isolation period, but it wasn't total isolation because I still had access to my kids, my family, my work environment. But during that year, my mentor had me drop every single friend that I was associated with at the time that he and I started our mentorship. And it was a real disruption. It was like, what? And he was like, yes, because if you want different things, you need different people. And so for a year, I journeyed by myself. I didn't have any romantic entanglements. I dated myself. I went out to restaurants by myself. I traveled by myself. I learned so much about cultures and diversity of people just by traveling with myself. You know, if you travel with a group of people, someone want to go place A, someone want to go place B, someone want to go place C. But when you travel by yourself, you had free will to enjoy what you want from that culture. And so I learned to appreciate a lot about my life, where I live. I learned to, I saw the riches that were just unimaginable to me, but I also saw people living beneath the poverty line. And so I learned how to appreciate and value the things that I have as a result of being enriched in those cultures and having that year where I journeyed by myself without having my opinions questioned, or I was able to form my own opinions, my likes, my dislikes, without the influence of other people. And so for a year, I just tarried and rebuilt my life.
That is so excellent. So you spent 1 year cultivating yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's interesting because I hear different people say, well, I can't even spend a month by myself getting to know myself. So it's vitally important. And why do you think it's vitally important for us to just take that time to cultivate ourselves? Because, sometimes we feel like we're in a hidden season. And then sometimes we need to pull ourselves back and place ourselves in a hidden season for that growth process to happen.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest value and your biggest takeaway in spending that year just focused on you and your children?
I got really, really clear. Like the clarity of mind that came being in that cocoon helped me to really focus on how I wanted to make a difference in the world, what that would look like. But it also caused me to heal, right? Because being busy, and we have to question why we want to stay busy so much. But when I no longer was bogged down with busyness, then the trauma started to bubble to the surface. The trauma that had me shackled to my past, the pain, the disappointment, all of the heartbreak, all of the bitterness that was still sitting in my chest could bubble to the surface now because my mind was free. It had time. And I didn't want to face some of those things, but there's no way to heal but to go through those difficult layers, peel them back and soothe them. And so during that year, the greatest value for me was being able to heal from all of that trauma that was sitting in my chest. And the more I released those situations, the freer I started to feel. It just felt like the cement block that was sitting on both of my shoulders, that they dropped away. And I felt at ease and I felt acceptance and I felt peace because I didn't have all this chatter in my head from other people about what they thought of my circumstances and your stepfather did what? Your mommy did what? And their influence on me, it allowed me to let those things come to the surface, and I inspected them one by one and dealt with them. So the healing and the clarity There's just no price value that you can put on that.
Right, I agree. I say there's no price value for my peace.
Yes.
Because I absolutely love having my peace. So you basically lost weight and you increased in your healing, you increased in your value, increased in your self-worth, and you increased in your peace by spending that 1 year just focused on your healing.
Yes, I did.
So
It was difficult. It was, the first month was the most difficult month because of course I'd been accustomed to being busy. But the way that I got through that first month, and it's a tip that I want to give our viewers, is when I started to sit in the silence, there were words that came to my head. No one is going to want to know you when you come out of this. So I wrote, my mentors, write them down. So I wrote that out. No one is going to want to know you. And then I answered that thought by saying, absolutely, I'm going to be smarter. I'm going to be wiser. I'll have experience. So I started to talk back to the negative thoughts and let them know that I recognized that they were fake. And I told them what the reality would be. And so that's how I got through. Nobody would want you after not being in a romantic relationship for you. Of course, someone would want to, you see that? Of course, someone would want me. I am going to be I'm going to be the prize. They're going to be so happy to have a happy, healed woman, focused, goal-oriented, just focused girl. So you have to learn how to talk back to the negativity that pops up.
Right. You have to talk back to it because the negativity that pops up, it does nothing for us to just say in our mind, I don't believe this.
Yes.
Right? You have to talk back to those things. So speak those things that are not as though they are. And you have to, excuse me, you have to talk back to those negative thoughts and let them know you do not have power over me.
Yes.
Right? So you were in your isolation and you got growth in your isolation.
Yes.
Imagine how much better the mental and emotional well-being of people would be if we just took some time to heal.
Yes.
Instead of going from one abusive relationship to another one. Or maybe the relationship wasn't abusive, but you just went from one relationship straight to another one without healing from what happened. So when you do that, we're talking about taking your power back and changing the game. When you go from one relationship to another and you haven't taken that time to heal, you still don't have your power back.
You don't have it, no.
You just transferred your power.
Yeah, you don't have it back. You don't.
Yeah. So that is, all this has been good. So we talked about building your personal brand. So you have 4 books. Talk about, give us some insight on each one of your books.
I would be happy.
And then how viewers can get them, what inspired you to write it, especially your first book. I'm always inspired about what inspired you for that first book, because it's always a juicy story behind that first one.
Yes, and there is a juicy story. So one night in my dreams, I got this vision to write the book, right? And it was supposed to be a book about how to help women come through difficult situations so that they know that they're not alone. Mm-hmm. I was like, no way, no how, I'm not writing this book. I'm not sharing all of my life stories. I'm not going to be letting people know what I went through. No, sir. And for a year, I could not sleep. For a year, every time I went to sleep, I was nagged in my dreams about this book. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. So I wrote my first book called Chase Your Dreams. Now, this book was written in disobedience because this is not the book that God called me to write. I just said,
hold on, we got to stop. Did you say this book was written in disobedience? So you acknowledge that you wrote a book that I'm sure is successful out of disobedience.
Absolutely.
Okay, keep going.
I wrote this book just to say, okay, God, I did it. I wrote a book. And so I wrote Chase Your Dreams. Now, Chase Your Dreams is a book that's a guide, a 6-step guide for achieving your dreams and your goals. And so in this book, we talk about how to craft your vision. how to know what your mission is, how to establish your core values. In the book, we also talk about how to select a mentor, the benefits of being a mentor, how to improve your image. We talk about how to be resilient. So this book is really a book to help you create a blueprint for your life. Now, after I wrote that book, I got no relief. And so in obedience this time,
there it is right there.
I wrote this book called Bruised But Not Broken. And in Bruised But Not Broken, we go on a journey of all the things that women deal with: fears, choices, awareness, loneliness, inner circle relationships. And so we take some time to read a story about a situation where I faced those things and how I came through it, and some advice. And also there is some journaling that happens in this book as well. So you're able to write your thoughts and your feelings in each chapter. And then I wrote this book. This here is, I mean, out of all of my books, no lie, this book is my favorite. This book is called Sisters Stand Up Again. And this is a woman's guide to reclaiming her power. This is a short read, but this is a power-packed book for a woman who really wants to reclaim her power. As a matter of fact, I have a course called Sisters Stand Up Again that's built from this book. And in this book, we talk about the power of acceptance, the power of forgiveness, the power of self-love, the power of bouncing back. So this book really helps that sister who's been in a difficult situation come through. So I call it the guiding light. That's what this book is. And then my fourth and fifth book, and I call it fourth and fifth book because this is the Evolving Woman. This is a 21-day journey to help women embrace their authentic lives, to really come into who they are, what they want to be, and to focus on affirming themselves. So after each chapter, there is an affirmation guide for the woman as well. And so I find too that some women just want to do the affirmations, which is why the book is split. So this is a full journey. And then this one is just 21 days of affirmations, and you could choose to get either one, depending on where you are in your life's journey as well. So those are the books that I've written so far.
Very nice. I like that. And you know, I like the titles of all of them, but of course the one that captures me the most is Bruised But Not Broken.
Yes, because that's what I was. I was bruised, but I was not broken.
That's the title that captures me the most, because there are a lot of women and there are a lot of men who are bruised and they think they're broken. They think that they can be of no value to anybody else. They think that nobody else is going to want them. They feel that they've just lost it all because they've been bruised. They've been hurt. They may have been traumatized by somebody or, you know, in their past, or, you know, they may be being traumatized right now. There could be a woman who's watching now who's in an abusive relationship. We talked about that earlier at the beginning of the segment.
Yes.
Or it may be a man, because I always like to bring up men as well as women, because I know some men who've been in abusive relationships. So there may be somebody watching this now or may catch it on the replay that you may be in a bruised situation. You may feel like everything is just crushing down on you. We want to encourage you to not give up.
Yes.
You may be bruised, but you are not broken. There is healing for you. But, you know, Duquesa, you were talking about being in your isolation and going through your healing. And you were talking about the things that were coming up in your mind and in your thoughts as you were in your process of taking your power back and changing the game. When we're going through our healing process, it's painful.
Yes, it is.
Would you not agree?
It is very painful. And there's no way to get to the other side but to walk through the pain. When we, you know, and I like to equate this to, if you live in a house and there's a crack, when the mason comes to repair that crack, he chips into the crack. He digs that out. And after he cleans it out by digging it out, he applies the healing balm. So we have to get into that crack, clean it out, apply that healing balm so that it could heal properly. Because once it heals properly, it's smooth, right? And so we have to look at the pain. When we avoid the pain, we stay shackled to whatever that situation is.
Mm-hmm. Have you read my first book? I think you've been dipping in my first book, Broken Believer No More. Because I actually use a different analogy. I talk about a wound. So if you have a wound that is just deep, putting a Band-Aid over it is not going to heal it. You got to get inside that wound, get all the dirt, the debris, the necrotic tissue. You got to get all that stuff out. And while you're getting it out, it's painful.
Yes.
But it's necessary for healing. So yeah, so you can't put a Band-Aid over a deep wound, and you can't just partially try to cover up a crack, because that crack is only going to get bigger and it's going to get worse.
Yes.
Finally, I want to ask you, so one of the things that Ms. Dean does, she helps people organize their lives so they can achieve their impossible goals. So do you have some impossible goals that you're trying to achieve?
Absolutely.
That's one of her missions. That's one of her goals. So tell us about the 6 ways to take ownership of your life.
Well, that's a free workshop that I'm offering on February 8th. It's less than an hour. And so it's an investment of 50 minutes of your time. And as a result of participating in that workshop, you will go from feeling powerless over your life to having the action steps required to step into your unshakable self. Now, I can't tell you what the course is, but what I can tell you is that these 6 steps are really going to help you understand what it takes to own your life. And it's also going to help you to understand why you're not taking action. Seriously. And so there are 4 reasons why we really don't take action. And then these 6 steps are going to help you become clear. They're also going to help you to understand that in order to get to the next side, there's a risk that needs to be taken. There's a calculated risk that needs to be taken. We're also going to be talking about how to love what you do, because when you love what you do, you own your power. You're no longer getting up and feeling dead on a job that's sucking the life out of you, because you've learned how to transition from that place into something that you love. So this is just 50 minutes of power-packed information to help you take ownership of your life. And I really hope to see you in the session. It's a free session, like I said, so be sure to register and let's have this discussion.
Did you say free?
F-R-E-E, yes.
So this is a free, ladies, I will drop it, ladies and gentlemen, I will drop the link in the chat when we finish, so you can go to this link, register for this event, 6 ways to take ownership of your life. So now, Duquesa, we talked about your first marriage and how it winded up being an abusive relationship, and you left 3 times. That 3rd time when you left was the time that you left for good. But I'm looking at this absolutely beautiful picture behind you on the beach with your husband in an amazing embrace and kiss. Now, is this on the island of the Bahamas where you live?
It is. Yes, it is. It's in the capital in Nassau, on one of our most beautiful beaches.
Nice. So it's very beautiful, and congratulations to you for overcoming. So I say that, and we're going to close with this. Give the ladies who are in an abusive relationship or have been in an abusive relationship, give them some hope on taking their power back and changing the game.
Absolutely. Ladies, I just want to take a minute to gather the right words so that you can see that your future is so bright. But in order to claim that bright future, you have to release the things that are holding you down and holding you back. And a lot of times when we are in abusive relationships, our abuser dominates us because there are some fears inside of us. They have identified our weaknesses and they press on those weaknesses. Sometimes we feel that we're not enough, that we're not lovable, that we don't deserve anything better, that we better take what we have because we don't know if we'll get anything in the future. But I want you to know that all of God's creations are worthy. We are all deserving. We're all lovable, even in our most unlovable states. We are lovable. And there was a time in my life where I didn't even think that this was possible. As a matter of fact, I turned off the thought of marriage because I figured who would want me? Who would want all of the trauma that I'd gone through? Who would want to be with someone that was dealing with all of those things? But it wasn't until I healed that trauma that it really didn't matter if anybody else wanted me. It didn't really matter if there was a romantic interest outside of the love that I had for me, because I understood the love for me was the greatest gift that I could give to myself. And when we learn to love ourselves, we attract other people because they see that love, they see that light. And I wasn't even looking for this dude. I was about my life, working in purpose, and he saw me, and because I was out there working in purpose, he was attracted to that. And our journey by no means was easy. We're two different people, and we had to come to a place of agreement to get to the altar. And so good relationships take communication, take two people, give and take, compromise, acceptance. And so I want you to know that if you're settling in a relationship because you don't think that someone else out there is going to love you for whatever reason, like I did, because I had two kids, I didn't think that anybody would want a single mom with two kids. I just want you to know that those external things don't matter to the person that loves you. What they fall in love with, they fall in love with your personality, your kindness. They fall in love with the person that you are. So be the best you possible. Don't focus on finding love outside of you. Focus on building the love inside of you. And I promise you that as you build the love inside of you, that light is going to attract someone who is going to see the good in you and want to have that as well. Release the past, let it go, and look forward to a bright future where you could stand on the beach and be kissed and embraced by a man who truly loves you and who is willing to put in the work to make the relationship and the marriage good for both of you.
What else can you say after that? Nothing. So Mrs. Duquesa Dean, extraordinaire, I want to thank you so much for being here with me tonight, for sharing your story, for helping us understand how to take our power back and change the game. Yes. Ladies, gentlemen who are joining us on Facebook, I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for those who will watch this on the replay. You all have an absolutely amazing week. And Ms. Duquesa, do you have any closing words for us today?
Yes, I'm going to encourage you to stay standing in your power. Mountaintop experiences when you're celebrating, ground in your power. Valley experiences, find that grit in you, that inner courage, and hold on to your power and rise with it.
Thank you so much. It's your girl, Dr. Monica and Ms. Duquesa Dean. We're telling you we love you to life. Have an absolutely amazing weekend, amazing week, and make 2021 a great year for you.